One word.
Kneel! Publicly! Get down. Scrub my shoes. Now.
I'm not your slave.
He was looking straight at Kendra, the black janitor holding a mop.
You don't get to tell me a damn thing. You're a stray dog that wandered into my house. Dogs kneel when their master speaks.
His finger jabbed toward her face. Dead silent. Not one soul moved. She knelt. She wiped his shoes with a rag. Slow, steady, eyes locked on the floor. What none of them knew, what Garrett Holloway would have nightmares about for the rest of his life, was exactly who he just forced to the ground. But before you judge anyone in that room, let me take you back to where this whole thing started. 6 months before that Monday morning, 5:15 a.m., a small apartment on the east side of the city. No doorman, no elevator, just a narrow hallway that smelled like old carpet and coffee from the unit next door. Kendra Sullivan stood in front of her bathroom mirror. Gray janitor uniform, hair pulled back, name badge clipped to her chest. Just Kendra, no last name. She stared at her reflection like she was studying a stranger. Behind her, the bedroom wall told a different story. Framed photographs lined every inch of it. Her father, Reginald Sullivan, shaking hands with senators, cutting ribbons at tech campuses, accepting humanitarian awards in rooms full of people wearing tuxedos. The man had built a venture capital empire worth billions before cancer took him 5 years ago. He left behind one daughter, one trust, and a 60% stake in a company called Bridgewell Industries. Kendra grabbed her car keys off the counter, walked past the front door and down to the parking lot. She climbed into a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard and a faded air freshener hanging from the mirror. Her real car, a black Mercedes SUV, sat in a private garage across town, untouched for 6 months. 6 months ago, a brown envelope arrived at her door. No return address. Inside, printed emails. Buried HR complaints. Photos of break rooms with signs that read "Staff Only" posted right above where the black janitors ate lunch. All from Bridgewell Industries, all pointing to one man. She could have sent lawyers. She could have made phone calls. Instead, she filled out a janitorial application under her mother's maiden name and showed up for the night shift. She wanted to see the truth with her own eyes. She needed to know who stayed silent. She needed to know who suffered. And she needed to know how deep the rot really went. Now let's talk about Bridgewell Industries. 22 stories of glass and steel in the middle of downtown. One of the top defense-adjacent consulting firms in the entire Southeast. The kind of building where the lobby alone cost more than most people's houses. Polished marble floors, chrome elevators, fresh orchids at the front desk every Monday. But behind the shine, a different world. The culture inside Bridgewell was sharp and cold. Executives walked fast and talked loud. Assistants kept their eyes down. And service staff? They were ghosts. Janitors used a separate entrance on the east side of the building. They rode a freight elevator that smelled like bleach. They ate lunch in a basement break room with no windows and one flickering light. Kendra mopped the executive floor every morning from 5:30 to 8. She emptied trash cans outside corner offices where people made decisions worth millions. She overheard conversations about contracts, bonuses, and layoffs. And every night, she went home and typed her notes into an encrypted phone she kept inside her locker. Names, dates, times, witnesses. She was building a file. And nobody noticed, because nobody ever looks at the janitor. 8:45 a.m. A black Escalade pulled up to the front entrance. Garrett Holloway stepped out like he owned the sidewalk. Navy suit, gold watch, shoes polished to a mirror shine. He tossed his keys to the valet without looking, shook hands with 2 executives waiting by the door, smiled wide, laughed loud, the kind of man who fills a room the second he walks into it. But only for certain people. Garrett grew up middle class in suburban Ohio. No trust fund, no family connections. He clawed his way into finance through state school and 80-hour weeks. Married into old money, then got divorced when the money got bored of him. That chip on his shoulder never went away. It just changed shape. The kid who once felt small learned how to make other people feel smaller. That morning, he walked past Kendra in the hallway. She was mopping near the elevator, wet floor sign out, head down, doing her job. Garrett didn't slow down, didn't look at her. He pulled a balled-up napkin from his pocket and dropped it on her freshly mopped floor. Kept walking, didn't even break stride. Kendra watched him go. She picked up the napkin, put it in her cart, said nothing. But she remembered. Monday morning, 8:55 a.m. The ground floor atrium at Bridgewell Industries was already packed. Garrett had called a company-wide meeting, all hands, no exceptions. About 50 employees stood in loose rows between the marble columns and the reception desk. Some held coffee cups, some clutched tablets. A few whispered to each other near the back, but most just stood there, quiet, stiff, waiting. The atrium smelled like fresh espresso and floor wax. Morning sunlight poured through the 2-story glass wall behind the reception desk. It lit up the room like a stage. And that's exactly how Garrett treated it. He stood at the front, on a small raised platform. No podium, just him, sleeves rolled to the elbows, jaw set. He liked it this way. Nothing between him and his audience. It made people feel like he was talking to each of them personally. It also made it impossible to hide. "Q3 numbers are in," he started, voice sharp, controlled. "And let me be clear. They're not where I want them." He paced the platform, made eye contact with specific people, let the silence do the work. "The Whitford defense contract is under federal review. That's 42% of our projected Q4 revenue sitting in limbo. The board is asking questions. I'm asking questions. And some of you," he pointed out into the crowd, "should be asking yourselves whether you belong in this building." Nobody moved. Nobody coughed. The only sound was the low hum of the air conditioning and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. Now here's the thing. This meeting was supposed to start at 10. Garrett moved it up an hour without telling half the building, which meant the janitorial crew was still finishing their morning shift. Kendra was near the back of the atrium, mop in hand, bucket on wheels beside her. She was finishing the last stretch of floor near the east corridor. Her supervisor, Dale, a thin, nervous white man in his late 40s, had told her to be done by 8:30. But the schedule changed. Nobody told her, so there she was, gray uniform, wet mop, standing at the edge of a room full of suits. She kept her head down, moved quietly, tried to disappear. But Garrett Holloway had eyes like a hawk when it came to things that bothered him, and right now, in the middle of his performance, something was bothering him. He stopped mid-sentence. His gaze drifted past the front rows, past the middle managers, past the analysts and the assistants, all the way to the back corner, where a woman in gray was pushing a mop bucket toward the exit. "Excuse me." The room turned. "Did anyone authorize the cleaning lady to be in here during my meeting?" 50 heads swiveled toward Kendra. She froze. The wheels on her bucket squeaked once against the marble. The sound cut through the silence like a knife. Dale, standing near the side wall, felt his stomach drop. He raised a hand halfway. "Mr. Holloway, She was scheduled to finish before—" "I didn't ask for an excuse, Dale. I asked a question." Dale shut his mouth. Kendra gripped the mop handle and started wheeling toward the corridor. Quiet, fast, eyes on the floor. But Garrett wasn't done. He stepped off the platform. His shoes clicked against the marble. Sharp, deliberate, like a metronome. Each step echoed through the atrium. People parted to let him through without being asked. He walked straight toward Kendra. Stopped 3 feet away. She could smell his cologne. Something expensive, something sharp, like cedar and leather and money. He looked down at his shoes, tilted 1 foot. A tiny scuff on the toe of his left shoe, barely visible. Then he looked at her. "Actually, hold on. Since you're here..." Kendra stopped. "You see that?" He pointed at the scuff. "That's a $1,500 shoe, and there's a mark on it." He tilted his head, the corner of his mouth curled up. "Kneel." A murmur rippled through the crowd, soft, uncertain, like the first few drops before a storm. "Get down and scrub my shoes. Every last scuff. Now." Kendra's knuckles went white around the mop handle. "I'm not your slave." "Slave?" Garrett barked out a laugh. "Honey, a slave at least had value. You? You're the dirt on my floor. Then fire me. Go ahead. Garrett's smile disappeared. He closed the gap between them. His finger jabbed toward her face. You don't get to tell me a damn thing. You're nothing. You hear me? You're a stray dog that wandered into my house. And in my house, dogs kneel when their master speaks. The whole lobby held its breath. 50 people, dead silent. Not one soul moved. Kendra looked at his face. Then she looked past him, slowly scanning the room. Eyes moving from face to face, cataloging. The ones who looked away. The ones who stared at their shoes. The one woman in the third row biting her lips so hard it turned white. The man near the pillar who clenched his fist but kept it at his side.
Troy Ashford. Black. 35. Mid-level project manager. He stood near the middle of the crowd. His jaw was locked so tight the muscles in his neck were visible. He took a half step forward. Then he stopped. He'd filed 2 HR complaints about Garrett in the past year. Both buried. Both ignored. He knew what speaking up cost in this building. And he knew the price hadn't changed. Kendra saw him. She saw his foot move. And she saw it stop. That told her everything she needed to know.
She set the mop against the wall, reached into her cart, pulled out a cleaning rag, and slowly, deliberately, she lowered herself to her knees. The marble was cold. She could feel it through the fabric of her uniform pants. The lobby was so quiet she could hear the clock on the far wall ticking. She wiped Garrett's left shoe. Slow, steady. 1 stroke, 2 strokes. Then the right shoe. Garrett watched her. That smirk came back. He rocked on his heels like a man watching a show he'd paid good money for. When she finished, he patted her on the shoulder. 2 firm taps. The way you'd pat a dog that finally learned to sit. See? Everyone has a role. Know yours. He turned and walked back to the platform, straightened his cuffs, cleared his throat, picked up right where he left off. Quarterly numbers, pipeline projections, team accountability, as if nothing had happened. Behind him, Kendra stood up. Her knees ached from the cold marble. Her hands were steady. Her face was blank. She picked up her mop, grabbed her cart, and pushed it toward the corridor. The wheels squeaked again. This time, nobody turned around. 11:30 a.m. Basement break room. The fluorescent light above the table buzzed and flickered. The room smelled like microwaved leftovers and industrial cleaner. One vending machine hummed in the corner. The paint on the walls was peeling near the ceiling. No windows, no clock. Just a room where the people who cleaned the building came to sit down for 15 minutes. Kendra sat alone at a small metal table. Her hands were flat on the surface. She wasn't eating. She wasn't scrolling her phone. She was still. But inside, she was on fire. Not fear. Not sadness. Something colder. Something with edges. She reached into the pocket of her uniform and pulled out a small device. A body camera, no bigger than a button, clipped inside the lanyard of her name badge. It had recorded everything. Every word, every face, every second of silence. She pressed play. Watched the footage on the tiny screen. Garrett's voice came through, tinny but clear. Dogs kneel when their master speaks. She saved the file. Encrypted it. Put the camera back. Footsteps in the hallway. Troy Ashford appeared in the doorway. He looked like he hadn't exhaled in 2 hours. He sat down across from her. Didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, quiet, almost ashamed. I'm sorry. I should have said something. Kendra looked at him. Her eyes were calm, focused. Nothing like the woman who had just been on her knees.
Don't apologize to me. Start thinking about who you want to be when all of this comes down. Troy frowned. What do you mean, comes down? She didn't answer. He sat there for another minute. Then he left. Still confused. Still carrying the weight of what he didn't do. Kendra waited until his footsteps faded. Then she pulled out a second phone. A personal one, not the company device. She dialed a number. 1 ring, 2 rings. Click. It's time, she said. Set the board meeting for Friday. She hung up, slid the phone back into her pocket, and sat there in the flickering basement light. The woman who'd just been called a stray dog, planning exactly what came next. Tuesday morning, 9:15 a.m. Garrett Holloway walked down the 7th floor corridor with 2 clients from a defense firm out of Virginia. Both men wore dark suits and visitor badges. Garrett was mid-pitch, talking margins, talking timelines, talking synergy. His voice bounced off the walls like he was performing on a stage. Kendra was on her hands and knees near the water fountain. A coffee spill. Dark roast. Someone had knocked over a full cup and left it there. Brown liquid pooled across the white tile like a stain spreading on a bedsheet. She didn't know Garrett was coming. She didn't hear him until his shoes appeared in front of her face. He stopped, looked down at her, then turned to his clients with a grin. "Gentlemen, meet our janitor. Don't worry, she's very obedient, practically trained at this point." One of the clients let out an uncomfortable laugh. The other just looked away. Garrett kept walking. Didn't break stride. Left Kendra there on the floor with brown coffee soaking into the knees of her uniform. She wrung out her rag, wiped the last streak off the tile, and pulled out her phone, typed the date, the time, the names of the 2 clients, then slipped it back into her pocket. Wednesday, company-wide email, sent at 7 a.m. from Garrett's office. Subject line: New dress code policy, effective immediately. The memo ordered all janitorial and maintenance staff to wear bright orange safety vests at all times while inside the building. The stated reason was workplace safety and staff visibility. Kendra read the email on her phone in the basement break room. She looked around. 4 other janitors sat at the table. 2 black, 1 Hispanic, 1 white. All of them had the same look on their faces, the kind of look you get when someone spits in your food and tells you it's seasoning. The orange vests arrived in a cardboard box by noon. Cheap nylon, reflective strips, the kind construction workers wear on highway projects. Not a single executive, analyst, or assistant was required to wear one. Just the cleaning staff, the people who mopped, the people who emptied the trash, the people who were already invisible, now forced to glow like traffic cones. Kendra zipped hers on, walked the executive floor that afternoon. She passed a group of junior analysts near the kitchen. One of them elbowed his friend, whispered something. They both laughed. She kept walking. She didn't flinch, but she added the memo to her file, screenshot, timestamp, saved. That same Wednesday afternoon, Troy Ashford sat across from Diane Caldwell in her corner office on the 16th floor. Diane was Bridgewell's chief legal counsel. 48. Blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. Reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Her desk was immaculate, not a paperclip out of place. Troy had requested this meeting 3 times. 3 emails, 2 voicemails. Diane finally agreed, but only for 15 minutes. "I want to know the status of my complaints," Troy said. He kept his voice even, professional, but his fingers drummed against his knee under the table. "I filed the first one 8 months ago. The second one 6 months ago. I haven't heard a single word back." Diane took off her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose, sighed like she was about to explain something to a child. "Troy, these processes take time. There are protocols, reviews, multiple departments have to weigh in." 8 months, Diane. The man called a black intern boy in front of a conference room. I was there. I heard it. I named witnesses. What exactly is there to review? Silence. Diane leaned back in her chair. She looked at the door, then at the window, then back at Troy. "Off the record?" Troy nodded. Her voice dropped. "Garrett has final say on all internal HR actions. Every complaint goes through his desk before it goes anywhere else. You know how this works." Troy stared at her. "So you're telling me the man I reported is the one deciding whether my report goes anywhere?" Diane didn't answer. She put her glasses back on, picked up a pen, started writing something on a notepad that didn't need writing. "I think our 15 minutes are up." Troy stood. He didn't slam the door on his way out, but he wanted to. He walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and stood there staring at his own reflection in the chrome doors. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly the way it was designed to work. Now here's what Garrett was really worried about, and it wasn't Kendra. Behind the polished shoes and the power plays, Garrett Holloway had a problem. A $4.2 million problem. For the past 3 years, Garrett had been funneling company money through a shell company called Whitmore Holdings, registered in Delaware. On paper, Whitmore was a consulting vendor, submitting invoices for strategic advisory services that didn't exist. In reality, every dollar went straight into an offshore account Garrett controlled. It started small. 80,000 here, 120,000 there, but it grew, quarter after quarter, invoice after invoice, until the total hit $4.2 million. The thing about stealing in small amounts is that nobody notices until someone does. And someone had started noticing. Pamela Greer, chairwoman of the board, had flagged 3 invoices from Whitmore Holdings during the last quarterly review. She didn't accuse anyone. She just asked questions. Calm, specific questions. The kind of questions that made Garrett's stomach turn. Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Garrett sat in his home office at his waterfront condo. Crystal glass of bourbon on the desk, phone pressed to his ear.
I need you to clean up the Whitmore invoices, he told his accountant. All of them. Backdate the service agreements. Make it look routine. A pause on the other end. Garrett, if anyone audits those, nobody is going to audit anything. Just do it. He hung up, took a long sip of bourbon, stared at the city lights through his floor-to-ceiling windows. He wasn't thinking about Kendra. He wasn't thinking about Troy. He wasn't thinking about the woman he'd made kneel in front of 50 people. He was thinking about himself. That's all he ever thought about. Thursday, 2 p.m., conference room on the 14th floor. Garrett held a smaller leadership meeting, about 15 people, department heads, senior managers, the inner circle. The room smelled like leather chairs and dry erase markers. Kendra was there. Not by choice. Dale, her supervisor, had been pulled aside by Garrett's assistant that morning and told to send Kendra specifically to serve water and coffee during the meeting. Not any janitor. Kendra. She walked in carrying a tray of glass water bottles and ceramic mugs. Orange vest over her gray uniform, head down, quiet. Garrett didn't acknowledge her at first. He was mid-discussion about the defense contract pipeline. But as Kendra set a water glass near his elbow, he paused, looked at her, then looked at the room. You know, Kendra here could probably run this meeting better than half of you. A few confused chuckles. I mean it. She shows up early, doesn't complain, does exactly what she's told. He leaned back. If this company goes under, at least she'll be fine. You people always land on your feet. The chuckles died. The room went stiff. A young white woman near the end of the table, Rachel, junior executive, 29, straightened in her chair. Her pen stopped moving. That's not appropriate. Every head turned. Garrett looked at her like she'd just thrown a glass of water in his face. Excuse me? I said that's not appropriate. What you just said, it's not okay. Garrett's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward slowly. His voice went flat. Sit down, Rachel. I am sitting. Then shut your mouth, unless you want to join her. He gestured at Kendra without looking at her. I hear they need help in the basement. Rachel's face flushed red. Her hands trembled under the table, but she closed her mouth, picked up her pen, looked down at her notes. Kendra collected the empty tray, walked out of the conference room. The door clicked shut behind her. In the hallway she stopped, stood still for 5 seconds, then kept walking. She didn't need to write this one down. The camera on her badge had already caught every word. Oh, hell no. A whole week, kneeling, parading, orange vests. And nobody said a word. Not one person. Now imagine that's you. Imagine you're the one on your knees while 50 people just stand there watching. How long before you snap? Because what's coming next? Garrett had no idea. Friday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. The boardroom sat on the top floor of Bridgewell Industries. 22nd story. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. A long mahogany table stretched across the room with 12 leather chairs on each side. The air smelled like fresh coffee and polished wood. Pamela Greer, chairwoman of the board, sat at the head of the table. Silver hair, pearl earrings, reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose. She had a legal pad in front of her and a face that gave away nothing. 6 other board members filled the chairs around her. Some flipped through folders, some whispered to each other. The energy in the room was different, tight, loaded, like the air before a thunderstorm. Garrett walked in at 9:02, 2 minutes late, on purpose. He liked making people wait. He buttoned his jacket, flashed his usual grin, pulled out his chair at the center of the table. "Morning, everyone. Let's make this quick. I've got a lunch at noon." Then he noticed something, an extra chair at the far end of the table, and someone sitting in it.
A woman. Black. Mid-40s. Hair down. No gray uniform. No mop. No orange vest. She wore a tailored navy suit with a gold pin on the lapel. Her posture was straight. Her hands rested flat on the table, and her eyes were locked directly on Garrett Holloway. He squinted, tilted his head. Something about her face tugged at the back of his brain. He'd seen her before. But where? Then it clicked. The color drained from his face like water through a crack. What the hell is the janitor doing in my boardroom? Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. Pamela Greer took off her glasses, set them on the table, folded her hands. "Mr. Holloway, please sit down. This meeting was called by the majority shareholder of Bridgewell Industries." Garrett blinked. "The majority share... What are you talking about?" "Sit down." He sat. Kendra stood. She didn't rush. She didn't raise her voice. She buttoned the middle button of her jacket and looked around the table, the same way she'd looked around the lobby 4 days ago. Except this time, she wasn't holding a mop. "My name is Kendra Sullivan. My father was Reginald Sullivan. The Sullivan Trust holds 60% of Bridgewell Industries. I am the sole trustee." She paused, let it land. "Which means, Mr. Holloway, I don't work for you. You work for me." The room didn't breathe. Garrett's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He looked at Diane Caldwell, who sat 2 chairs away. Diane wouldn't meet his eyes. She stared at the table like it owed her money. Kendra reached under the table and pulled out a slim laptop. She opened it, turned it toward the room, pressed play. The footage from Monday filled the screen. Garrett's voice, loud, clear, unmistakable. "You're a stray dog that wandered into my house, and in my house, dogs kneel when their master speaks." Then the image of Kendra on her knees, wiping his shoes, 50 people standing in silence behind her. The video played for 53 seconds. Nobody in the boardroom moved for any of them. Kendra closed the laptop. "Over the past 6 months, I have documented a pattern of racial harassment, psychological abuse, and systemic discrimination carried out by the CEO of this company." Her voice was calm, each word precise. 2 HR complaints filed by a black employee were buried. Janitorial staff were forced into humiliating dress codes. I was personally subjected to racial slurs and physical degradation in front of the entire company. She looked directly at Garrett. "As majority shareholder, I am exercising my right under the company charter to call for an immediate vote of no confidence in the CEO." Garrett shot to his feet. His chair rolled backward and hit the window behind him. "This is insane! You can't do this! I built this company!" Pamela Greer didn't flinch. "The motion has been made. Do I have a second?" Silence. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then a board member at the far end raised his hand. "Seconded." "All in favor of removing Garrett Holloway as CEO effective immediately." 6 hands went up. Pamela's was the first. 1 hand stayed down. Garrett's oldest ally on the board, a man who looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. 6-1. Garrett's face twisted. Red crept up his neck like a rash. He pointed at Kendra. "You can't do this! I made this company what it is!" Kendra didn't blink. "You built nothing. You inherited a position and used it to degrade people. That ends now." She pressed a button on the conference phone. "Security to the boardroom, please." 2 minutes later, 2 uniformed guards appeared at the door. Garrett looked at them, then at Pamela, then at Diane, then back at Kendra. Nobody spoke. Nobody helped him. They handed him a cardboard box. He carried it to the elevator. The same elevator Kendra had ridden every morning for 6 months. The freight elevator that smelled like bleach. But today, Garrett took the main one, the chrome one, the one with the mirrors. He caught his own reflection on the way down. 22 floors. Alone. In the lobby, a handful of employees watched him walk out the front door. The same people who had watched Kendra kneel 4 days ago. This time, they watched Garrett fall. Garrett Holloway didn't make it to his car before he had his phone out. His fingers were shaking. He scrolled to his lawyer's number, hit dial. The phone rang twice. "Philip, it's Garrett. They just fired me. In my own boardroom. Some janitor. She says she owns 60% of the company. I want a wrongful termination suit filed by end of day." A pause on the other end. A long one. "Garrett, slow down. Who called the vote?" "The board. All of them. Pamela Greer led it. 6-1. Another pause. The sound of a keyboard clicking. "Was the majority shareholder present?" "Yes, that's what I'm telling you. The janitor. She says her name is Kendra Sullivan. Says her father's trust holds 60%. More clicking. Then silence. Then a long exhale. "Garrett, Reginald Sullivan's trust does hold 60% of Bridgewell Industries. It's in the SEC filings. And if his daughter is the sole trustee, she has full authority to call a shareholder vote under the company charter." A beat. "The vote was legal." Garrett's jaw clenched. "I don't care if it's legal. Find something. Find anything." "Garrett, listen to me. I've seen the charter. A majority shareholder can call a no-confidence vote at any time with board support. You were removed by a 6-1 margin. There's nothing to challenge. Then we go after her for, I don't know, fraud. She lied about who she was. She infiltrated the company. She applied for a job and got hired. That's not fraud." Another exhale. "And Garrett, that video. If she has footage of what happened in that lobby and it goes public, you won't just lose your title. You'll lose everything. Your reputation, your network, every board seat you've ever held." Garrett hung up without saying goodbye. He sat in his Escalade in the parking garage for 11 minutes. Engine off. Hands on the steering wheel, staring at the concrete wall in front of him. Then he started calling board members. One by one. Pamela Greer. Voicemail. David Anderson. Voicemail. Richard Cole. Voicemail. Stephen Moore. The phone rang 5 times. Then, a click. And silence. Stephen had picked up and hung up without saying a word. Garrett threw his phone against the passenger seat. It bounced off the leather and landed on the floor. For the first time in 9 years, nobody was picking up. Inside Bridgewell, the news moved through the building like wildfire. By 10:30, every floor knew. By 11, the lobby was buzzing. Small clusters of employees gathered near the coffee stations, near the elevators, near the windows, whispering, some confused, some relieved, a few openly smiling for the first time in months. At noon, Kendra stood in the same atrium where she had knelt 4 days ago. Same marble floor, same glass walls, same 50 faces, and then some. Word had spread. Closer to 70 people packed the space now. Some stood on the stairs to see over the crowd. Kendra wore the same navy suit from the boardroom. No mop, no orange vest, no name badge that said just Kendra. She stood on the same small platform Garrett had used for his quarterly speeches. Same woman, same face, different reality. "I was in this room on Monday," she said. Her voice carried, clean and steady across the marble. "Some of you watched what happened. Some of you laughed. Some of you wanted to help but were afraid." She paused, looked across the faces. "I understand fear. I do. But this company will no longer run on it." She announced 3 things. 1. An independent HR review conducted by an outside firm. 2. A full external audit of the company's finances. 3. A zero-tolerance policy on workplace discrimination, effective immediately. No warnings, no second chances, no buried complaints. If you've been hurt in this building by anyone at any level, there is now a path to be heard, and I give you my word, no one will bury it again.
Troy Ashford stood near the back of the crowd. His arms were crossed. His eyes were red. He exhaled, long, slow, shaky, like a man who'd been holding his breath for 4 years. 3 p.m., Diane Caldwell's office, door closed. Kendra sat across from her. No coffee, no small talk. You buried 2 HR complaints. You knew what Garrett was doing. You had the power to stop it and chose your comfort instead. Diane's hands trembled on her desk. I was afraid of retaliation. You don't know what it was like working under... You're the chief legal counsel of an $800 million company. Kendra's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Afraid isn't good enough. Diane opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. You're on administrative leave, effective now, pending the external review. Kendra stood, walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the handle.
You weren't evil, Diane. But you chose silence when people needed your voice. And silence, in a room full of power, is a choice.
The door clicked shut behind her. Diane sat alone in her corner office, 16 floors up, city view, every credential on the wall, and not a single one of them meant anything anymore. The external audit began the following Monday.
Kendra's legal team brought in a forensic accounting firm from Washington, D.C. 4 auditors. 3 weeks. Every invoice, every contract, every wire transfer from the past 5 years. Pulled apart line by line. It took them 9 days to find Whitmore Holdings. On paper, Whitmore was a consulting vendor, based in Delaware, registered to a P.O. box. It had submitted 63 invoices to Bridgewell Industries over 36 months, all for strategic advisory services, each one approved by one person, Garrett Holloway. The auditors pulled the invoices, cross-referenced them with deliverables, meeting logs, email chains, internal records. There were no deliverables, no meetings, no emails, no evidence that Whitmore Holdings had ever provided a single hour of actual work. 63 invoices, $4.2 million. Every cent wired to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, registered under a trust controlled by Garrett Holloway. Kendra's attorneys packaged the findings into a 140-page report, sent it to the state attorney general's office on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, it was on the desk of Detective Neil Forrest. Neil Forrest was 44.
15 years in financial crimes, the kind of investigator who drank black coffee at his desk and didn't leave until the numbers added up. He'd been building a preliminary case on Bridgewell's irregular filings for 6 months, but he'd never had enough to move forward. The audit report was the missing piece. He read it twice, highlighted 31 pages, called his supervisor. I need a warrant.
By Thursday, a federal judge signed off on an arrest warrant for Garrett Holloway. Charges: embezzlement, securities fraud, and wire fraud. Friday morning, 6:45 a.m. Garrett was standing in the kitchen of his waterfront condo, barefoot, robe untied, pouring coffee into a ceramic mug. The morning sun came through the sliding glass doors and lit up the marble countertop. He heard the knock before the doorbell rang. 3 sharp hits, the kind that doesn't ask permission.
He opened the door. 2 federal agents, badges out. Behind them, Detective Neil Forrest, hands in his coat pockets, face unreadable. Garrett Holloway? Yeah, what is this? You're under arrest for embezzlement, securities fraud, and wire fraud. Turn around, please. Garrett's mug slipped. Coffee splashed across the tile floor. Brown liquid spreading across white marble, just like the spill Kendra had cleaned on her hands and knees 2 weeks earlier.
He didn't resist. He turned around, felt the cold steel of handcuffs click against his wrists.
The same wrists that had worn a gold watch worth more than most people's cars. They walked him out the front door of his building, past the doorman who held the glass door open every morning, past the valet stand where his Escalade was usually parked, into the back seat of an unmarked sedan. No tailored suit, no polished shoes, just a bathrobe and handcuffs and the sound of a car door slamming shut.
The video leaked 3 days later. Kendra's legal team released the body camera footage as part of a civil filing against Bridgewell Industries. a class action lawsuit brought by current and former employees of color. The footage was filed as Exhibit A. Within hours, it was everywhere. CNN picked it up first, then MSNBC, then Fox, then every local news station between Atlanta and New York. The clip was 53 seconds long. Garrett's voice, sharp, cruel, unmistakable. "You're a stray dog that wandered into my house." Then Kendra, lowering herself to her knees. Then 50 people standing in silence. 53 seconds. That's all it took. The headline wrote itself. Every network ran a version of the same thing. CEO forces black employee to kneel and scrub his shoes. Didn't know she owned his company. Social media exploded. The clip racked up 12 million views in 48 hours. 22 million by the end of the week. The image of Garrett snapping his fingers became a meme. The phrase, "dogs kneel when their master speaks," trended on every platform for 5 straight days. Then, the floodgates opened. Garrett's ex-wife gave a brief interview to a national news outlet. She didn't hold back. She confirmed his history of racial remarks in private. Things he said at dinner parties, in the car, behind closed doors. Things she'd stayed quiet about during the marriage, because she was afraid. Former employees came forward, one after another. A black receptionist who was told to smile more so she didn't scare clients. A Hispanic IT technician who was passed over for promotion 3 years in a row despite perfect reviews. A black intern, the same one Troy had filed a complaint about, who said Garrett called him boy in front of an entire conference room. The stories stacked up like bricks, and every single one of them had the same foundation. A building where cruelty had been normalized and silence had been rewarded. The trial took 4 months. On the civil side, Bridgewell Industries, now under Kendra's leadership, settled the class action lawsuit. The terms: financial compensation for every affected employee, mandated structural reforms, an independent oversight committee to review HR practices for the next 5 years. On the criminal side, it went to court. The prosecution laid it out clean. 63 fake invoices, $4.2 million, an offshore account in Garrett's name. His own accountant testified against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. The man who'd been told to clean up the Whitmore invoices sat on the witness stand and walked the jury through every single transaction. Garrett's defense argued he was a hands-off executive, that the invoices were processed by subordinates, that he didn't know where the money went. The jury didn't buy it. Deliberation took 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back wall. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but sketch artists captured every moment. Garrett stood in a dark suit. No gold watch, no smirk. His lawyer stood beside him with a hand on his shoulder. The judge read the sentence. 8 years in federal prison. $4.2 million in restitution, $1.5 million in fines. Garrett's knees buckled. Just slightly. Just enough. He gripped the edge of the defense table to steady himself. The man who had made a woman kneel in front of 50 people could barely stand when it was his turn. In the weeks that followed, Kendra moved fast. She established the Sullivan Foundation for Workplace Equity, funded by $10 million from the Sullivan Trust. Its mission? Legal support, training programs, and policy reform for workers facing racial discrimination. Troy Ashford was promoted to Vice President of Operations. The man who had frozen in the lobby, who had taken a half step forward and stopped, was given the chance to take full steps from now on. Rachel, the junior executive who had spoken up on Thursday and been told to shut her mouth, was promoted to lead Bridgewell's new internal ethics office. The woman Garrett tried to silence now had the authority to make sure no one was ever silenced again. And Dale, Kendra's former supervisor, the man who followed orders, who sent her to serve water, who told her to wear the orange vest. Dale wasn't fired. He was reassigned and required to complete an extensive training program on workplace ethics and leadership accountability. He wasn't evil. He was afraid. But compliance with cruelty, even quiet compliance, is its own kind of failure. and Kendra made sure he understood that. 6 months later, Kendra Sullivan sat in a leather chair on the 22nd floor of Bridgewell Industries. Not as a janitor, not as a visitor, as chairwoman of the board. She didn't take the CEO title. She never wanted it. She appointed a new CEO through a transparent, company-wide search, a woman named Patricia Dawson, 51, with 20 years in corporate leadership and a reputation for building cultures people actually wanted to work in. Kendra oversaw from the board level. Quietly. Strategically. The way her father would have done it. The company looked different now. Not just on paper. In the air. In the hallways. In the way people talked to each other near the coffee machines and in the elevator banks. Employee satisfaction scores were up 31%. Turnover among employees of color dropped by nearly half. The new ethics office, led by Rachel, had processed more internal reports in 6 months than the previous HR department had handled in 3 years. Not because there were more problems, because people finally felt safe enough to speak. The Sullivan Foundation for Workplace Equity launched quietly that spring. $10 million from the Family Trust. Free legal aid for workers facing discrimination. Training programs for companies that wanted to change before they were forced to. Within 3 months, over 200 cases had been referred. Within 6, the foundation had partnered with 12 firms across 6 states. Kendra didn't hold a press conference. Didn't do interviews. She let the work speak for itself, just like her father taught her. Troy Ashford moved into his new office on the 18th floor. Vice President of Operations. Nameplate on the door. A window that overlooked the same city he used to stare at from the basement break room. On his first day, he sat at his desk for 10 full minutes before touching anything. Just breathing. Just sitting in a chair that finally felt earned. He kept one thing from his old cubicle. A sticky note he'd written to himself the day after the lobby incident. 3 words. Don't freeze again. He pinned it to the wall behind his monitor, where he could see it every single day. Rachel moved into the newly created ethics office on the 12th floor. She hired a team of 4, built a reporting system from scratch, anonymous, encrypted, accessible from any device. The first week it went live, 11 reports came in. Not because the company was falling apart, but because for the first time, people believed someone was actually listening. Garrett Holloway sat in a federal minimum security facility in central Virginia. Concrete walls, fluorescent lights, a bed that squeaked every time he moved. He wore a khaki jumpsuit with a number stitched above the pocket. No gold watch, no Italian leather shoes, no bourbon by the window. He had filed 2 appeals since his sentencing, both denied. His lawyer told him there might be a third option, but his voice didn't carry the confidence it used to. Even lawyers run out of things to say when the evidence is airtight. Garrett spent most of his days in the facility library, reading, pacing, sitting alone at a metal table not so different from the one in Bridgewell's basement break room, the room he never once stepped foot in during his 9 years as CEO. Funny how that works. Diane Caldwell resigned 2 weeks after being placed on leave. She didn't wait for the review to finish. She knew what it would find. 3 months later, she released a public statement. 4 paragraphs. No excuses. She admitted she had buried credible reports. She admitted she had chosen her career over the safety of the people she was supposed to protect. And she admitted that her silence made her complicit. After that, she began pro bono legal work for a nonprofit representing workers in discrimination cases. No salary. No recognition. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. Just the first step on a road she should have walked a long time ago. A Tuesday morning, 5:15 a.m. The Bridgewell lobby was empty. Just marble and silence, and the faint hum of the building waking up. Kendra walked through the front entrance. The glass door. The one that caught the first light of morning. She stopped in the center of the lobby. Stood exactly where she had knelt 6 months ago, looked down at the marble floor.
Smooth, cold, polished to a shine. She crouched, pressed her palm flat against the stone, held it there. She didn't kneel because she was weak. She knelt because she needed to see who would let it happen. And now she knew. She stood, straightened her blazer, walked to the chrome elevator, pressed 22. The doors closed, and Kendra Sullivan rose. Man, this story is fiction. But that silence? 50 people watching and doing nothing? That's real life. Now imagine you're the one on your knees. What would you do? Drop it in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Let's make sure stories like this get heard.